Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbong. The actress and author Sheetal Sheth wrote this cute kids book titled Raashi's Rakhis. It's about a little girl dealing with her brother, and the backdrop of it is a Hindu holiday. Pretty basic kids book stuff, right? And yet a decent chunk of this interview between her and Here and Now's Deepa Fernandes is spent discussing the trolls who try and ding Sheetal for injecting, quote, Western feminism into a story about Hinduism. And I bring that up to point out that nothing exists in a vacuum. There's a particular strain of Hindu nationalism feeding into this. And yet all Sheetal wants to do is invite more people into her culture. She talks about it after the break.
This message comes from Apple TV Plus original podcasts presenting My Devo. From the producers of Anything for Selena and the Pulitzer Prize-winning podcast Suave comes My Devo, a podcast about roots. Dive into the legendary life, music, and lasting influence of Latin America's most prolific songwriter and showman, Juan Gabriel, El Divo de Juarez. Hosted by Maria Garcia, this is My Devo, an Apple original podcast produced by Futuro Studios. Follow and listen on Apple Podcasts.
Indians across the world will be celebrating Raksha Bandhan. It's a Hindu holiday beloved by so many families involving food, music, lots of loud laughter and chatter and celebration. As part of the tradition, siblings and cousins tie beautiful coloured bracelets known as Rakhis around each other's wrists. Typically, it's the brothers that receive the bracelets from their sisters. In a new children's book, Raashi's Rakhis, a young girl decides to put her own spin on her family's Raksha Bandhan celebration. For more, let's bring in the author of the book, Sheetal Sheth. She's an author, activist, and actress. Welcome back, Sheetal, and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get into it.
Yeah, well, let's start with an overview for people who might not be familiar with Raksha Bandhan. Could you briefly explain how the holiday works and what it meant to you growing up?
Sure. So Raksha Bandhan has always been about celebrating family, and we would get together and we would kind of go through the motions of the tradition, which is celebrate, dance, eat a lot. And then you'd get to the point where the sisters would tie these bracelets called Rakhis as a sign of protection. So Raksha means protection, Bandhan means to tie. And so those bracelets, you would put on them, and the tradition from back in the day was the feeling of you're protecting them as they go off in the world to do all the things they're going to do. And in return, the brother would give a sweet or a gift kind of as an acknowledgement, kind of like a thank you to their sister.
And the protagonist in your book, little Raashi, she begins to question that. Raashi's mother explains, and I'm quoting from your book here, back then they didn't think girls should be doing as much as boys, meaning that there were less things they needed protection from. And Raashi obviously disagrees with that idea because she's got plenty of things she wants to do. And I'm just wondering, were you that little girl during your own family's celebrations, Sheetal? Questioning why it was one way, the tying of sisters to brothers and not brothers back to sisters?
Yeah, you know what? To be honest, it did cross my mind growing up, but I didn't feel like I had the agency or the words to kind of express what I was feeling. I think a lot of my growing up being first generation Indian American was asking questions to my parents, and often they would respond with, because that's the way we do things. And I found out that they didn't necessarily know either, because traditionally this is just what you do, you know? And so sometimes the meanings and the actual origins of things are not so well known, even by the people that are kind of practicing them. And so I started when I looked into it and saw the history of it, I realized, like many things, there is such a patriarchal layer to this. And why can't we update things? Why can't we challenge and decide what connects with our with our values, especially because I am so connected to my culture, and I'm not trying to betray it or not practice it, but I also need to feel aligned with it.
So Raashi then does something very different. Tell us what she does.
First of all, she makes her own Rakhis, which I think is really special. A lot of people just kind of buy them, or, you know, it's not necessarily a practice, but she actually really loves this festival. It's her favorite. And so in the moment of kind of having a bit of a disagreement with her brother, she realizes that, he doesn't give one back to her. So she decides to ask for one back. And all of her cousins and family friends, roll their eyes and are like, oh, come on. Again, this, which by the way, is very much my experience with people, a lot of people in my life, whenever I say something, they're like, oh, does everything have to be a problem, Sheetal? And I'm like, no, but there's a lot of things that are problematic.
Absolutely.
I wanted to channel that into this. Like I'm not trying to, again, be, quote, difficult, but there are things that are problematic, and it's our job to challenge that.
I get the sense that there are spaces of sisterhood, maybe, that you're looking for or trying to create with this book. Is that anything there?
Yes. Sisterhood, brotherhood, community. It's so necessary. And again, as someone who has 2 girls, the sisterhood that I want them to have, the sisterhood that I have in my life, which is why this festival and custom cannot be based on gender. It needs to be about the ties that bind us all.
But you got pushback to this. You got criticism. What has that been?
It's interesting. On one hand, I will say the majority has been like, oh my God, thank you. Or people have been like, I've been doing that too. Thank you for writing a book about it. But yes, there is a group of people that very publicly would comment on my Instagram, in their specific words, why Western feminists can't leave things alone. And I was like, what? There's so much to unpack. And by the way, another person started kind of, obviously didn't know anything about me, and started questioning my connection to my culture, to my knowledge of anything Indian. And I actually screenshot most of these comments and just posted them because I knew that the army would come and kind of say what needed to be said. I didn't have to even say anything. It's funny, Deepa. It feels like we should be in a place where we don't need to have these conversations anymore. But clearly, anytime you try to kind of take your own agency and feel like you're stepping in your power, there is bound to be resistance.
I don't know if you want to go there, but just spell out for us who that army is that came for you, because we're in a very particular time, especially in India, and the Modi government has this mission of Hindu nationalism. And I'm just wondering, if it was a different time and place, would that army have come for you?
It's interesting that you say that. I do think that people have become emboldened because there are governments and policies that are kind of pushing a certain narrative. So I agree. I think we are everywhere in the world, a very, difficult time. And sometimes it feels like, why are we wasting our energy on these nonsensical conversations? Because if anything, Deepa, it is inclusive. Like, my take on this is to actually bring more people in, to share our beautiful culture and to share our beautiful tradition and to practice it in a way that feels right. So it's actually the opposite of what they think.
And before we let you go, I want to ask you this, because there's this really lovely panel in the book where Raashi is listing all the things she wants to do. And she imagines herself being president. Now, we're in a very particular moment right now. In the book, we see a pair of small brown hands next to a book with the White House on it. And now we're looking at the very real possibility that our next president might have South Asian heritage, Kamala Harris. And I know you were recently on a call of South Asian women for Harris. Now, there was someone on that call who felt that because of, say, the Biden administration's Gaza policy, they couldn't support Harris for president, even if she is South Asian. And I'm wondering, just to get your take, should Harris's identity matter here, like it might to little Raashi, or should presidential candidates be judged on their records and their policy proposals?
I think it's a really personal decision, and I think people are looking for ways to connect to anyone. Personally, I don't vote for people based on their identity, based on their gender, any of those things. And so for me, there is no perfect candidate by any means. I have several reservations about Kamala Harris, but I also know that she is the person that I would love to be debating with. She is the person that I would love to take my grievances to, because she'd actually care, hear me out, and hopefully entertain them, whereas the alternative, there's no chance. And so if you're an activist or if you want something to change, you need to do it towards someone that actually gives I'm not going to swear, but like actually cares. I think that whatever it is that brings you to a candidate and brings you to the table is fine, because at the end of the day, voting is the most important thing, and using our civic, I think, responsibility, the right that we have to vote, is the most important thing. So I have no problem with people connecting to different parts of different candidates. Personally, it's got to be about the work. It has to be about the policies.
Sheetal Sheth is an actress, author, and activist, and her new children's book is called Rakhis. Sheetal, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I love talking to you guys.
And just a reminder that signing up for Book of the Day Plus is a great way to support NPR's book coverage and public media, and you'll get to listen to every episode sponsor-free. So please, go find out more at plus.npr.org/bookoftheday.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Merrill. Whatever your financial goals are, you want a straightforward path there. But the real world doesn't usually work that way. Merrill understands that. That's why, with a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan and a clear path forward. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC. Support for NPR and the following message come from Boll & Branch. Experience your best sleep in the softest organic cotton sheets. Get 15% off and free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com with code NPR. Exclusions apply. See site for details.